Hiya, this is Jason in Jason's Jungle. It's just started to drizzle outside, so I thought I'd come into the greenhouse and show you my dripping butt. So right down the end of my greenhouse I have a big water butt. This is 240-250 litres, and I have it inside the greenhouse because I want to keep the ambient temperature of the water similar to the plant, so if it's cold it won't be cold, it won't give them a shock. And it just makes it easier to run the irrigation system when it's there in the centre, because the two sides are balanced. But if we look at the top, you see the hose goes in through the lid. In there I've got a ball cock. When the water gets up to the right level, to virtually the top, that stops the flow. So I can go away, do something else, and the water doesn't automatically flood over. However, saying that, you can also see that I'm using cheap connectors on some of these pieces. Like that blue one especially. Don't use cheap connectors, because every time I connect the water, this one flies off and I end up dousing myself. As you can probably see from the drops on the water butt in the greenhouse, the water droplets from when it exploded, yeah, that's what you get for using cheap £1 pound shop kit. But anyway, as we're looking along this hose, you'll notice this bit, and this is connected down through a tube, through a valve, and goes down into a watering can. What this does is, when you have a stream of water going through here from the hose, it changes the pressure, so there's less pressure and it sucks up whatever's in the watering can. So I can make up a batch of feed in the watering can. Let's say I make a normal watering can's worth of feed, or maybe it's a strength and a half, and it'll go into here and it'll be just mixed in with all the water, and it'll drip out at a more dilute rate, but every day, you know, so that they're constantly getting the nutrients. But I don't give them as much as I would if I was to use the watering cans by themselves, because that's sort of a burst mode. Now you can see I've got this elevated on its base, on some paving flags, on some bricks, and that's to get as much head as possible, because what you want is a bit of pressure. Even though it's a low pressure system, you still need a bit of pressure for the water to come out of the drippers. Now one problem with that is when it's right up here, the water level, you get a lot more pressure than when it's down here. So up here you could be flooding your plants. Down here you could have a drought, you know, and it takes about 10 days for this to empty. But I work shifts, and sometimes I don't get down here for a week, so it's getting down towards the drought. And last year I was using containers for the last 3 years, and I was getting some split toms because of that. So we would, at the end of the week, towards the 10 days, they'd be just enough to keep them damp, and then suddenly once it's refilled, it would flood. This year I'm going into the ground. So as you can see, I've took up the membrane that I had, dug it up, mixed in compost manure, and I've planted into the ground now. So hopefully the ground will act as a buffer and absorb the excess moisture at the beginning of the week and feed it back to the plants later on in the week. The soil here is quite clay, so that will help with retaining the nutrients and the moisture. Yeah, so hopefully that's not going to be a big problem as it was in the last couple of years. But anyway, let's get back to the water butt. You notice I have a piece of string, and on the end of that string I have a bottle opener, corkscrew. Now that is a vital part of my irrigation system. What this does is, tied onto the other end of the string is, if you hear that, there's a little water bottle that's 3/4 full with water. That gives it enough buoyancy to float up and down, but enough weight to pull this corkscrew back. So when the water goes down, the float drags this back in with it, and as it is at the minute, it's full. But once it gets up to here, you know that this is empty. So that's basically a level indicator. I nicked that off somebody off of a forum for Grow Your Own magazine. Nick Dubb, so thank you Nick for that. Okay, down at the tap Let's get down there. Because there's a lot of stuff to stop it from leaking. I always get leaks. It comes out of there and it goes into this. This is a filter. So I clean this out every week, and that just stops any detritus that might have been got into the water butt from getting into the system. From there I go to a Dorlac battery powered water timer. I've tried a few different timers, but most of them, even if they say they work on a water butt, they don't give enough water coming through them. It's just a really small dribble. This one gives a reasonable flow. I think that's down to the fact that this is a proper ball valve rather than a diaphragm. So the diaphragm needs a bit of pressure to push it out of the way. The ball valve just has a big hole and it lets it through. From there it comes out of there and it goes down to the back. So in the centre of the back wall I have a T-joint that this goes into. This is just ordinary hose pipe down here, just standard hose pipe, but it goes into a T-joint which then splits into two arms, one around each side of the greenhouse. So if I just show you the T, this is the T that I mean. 13mm, and I use these not just to connect that to the two arms, but if you look down here, you can see I've connected the arms into off lines. So I brought a T-joint down and then I put in a valve, and I've got one of these each of the verticals, which is basically every 2 feet. Yep, so the valve means I can turn off each individual arm. So I can turn off each line of drippers, and that comes down, and then you have down here you have the individual dripper plunged into a hole in each of these valves. So the drippers I'm using are variable drippers. I'll just get one to show you. So this is a variable dripper. This bit snaps off here. You make a hole in your hose and push one end in, the slightly pointy end, and the other end you connect 4mm irrigation hose. Now the best way to do that is, once you cut the lengths, is get some hot water, stick the ends in and push it over. This dials so you can have it open for lots and you can have it closed for very little. I find this works better than the standard one setting dripper, because it lets me adjust it for each plant. I can have some plants that need a lot of water and some that needs less. I can adjust it for them. So I've got 4 ways of adjusting the amount of water a plant gets. One is adjusting the dripper, so that will do each individual plant. The other way is with this. At the minute it's full on, but I could turn it, so if it's at 90 degrees, I'll show you this one down here. So this is on full on. I turn it that way, 90 degrees, it's full off. If I have it halfway through, it'll let some through, so that'll turn down the amount of water going to each of these drippers. So I can do it individual, I can do it by arm. I can also adjust on here. The timer allows me to do it how many times a day. So I can do it every 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours, 12 hours, every 24 hours, 48, 72, or once a week. And allows us to see how long I want. So I could do 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, up to basically leaving it going for 3 hours. But if I adjust these, having it coming on more often, or not, or open longer or shorter, I can adjust the water for the entire greenhouse. So I've got different ways of adjusting the water. So when it gets hotter, I might have it coming on more often, I might have it coming on for longer, I might adjust each individual dripper. Okay, so I hope that has covered it, and that should tell you a bit more about my irrigation system. As I said, this is the 4th year I've had it. 3 years I've been in pots, and the big problem was the splitting of the tomatoes when it gets to the drought level, with last summer especially when it was really hot. So hopefully having it in the soil will solve that problem.